Yet more amazing testimony coming out of the Emergencies Act inquiry in Ottawa. And isn't it great to hear that tow truck companies and energy companies right across Western Canada and even the great state of Montana essentially flipped the bird to the government of Alberta when it went looking for independent contractors to clear the border blockade in Coutts, Alberta. But those hell-bent on shutting down a peaceful freedom protest are very, very diligent, given that the province was able to find and purchase 12 pieces of used heavy haul equipment in the days prior to the invocation of the Emergencies Act. But why? And joining me now to unravel this mystery on these latest revelations is our chief reporter for Rebel News, and that would be none other than Sheila Gunn-Reid. Hey there, Sheila, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Donald.
Well, I mean,
we're just going to get everybody's name wrong. I'll return the favor.
Sheila, I'm so sorry, but there's so much to unpack here. And I was looking over the manifest of the equipment, and this might be a minor thing, but it was the manifest of the equipment that the government bought. And one piece of equipment really stood out for me, namely a 1996 GMC 3500 pickup truck. Sheila, I'm no tow truck expert, but can this vehicle actually haul away an 18-wheeler?
No, I showed the list to my husband. He's like, that'll make a great farm truck, good used light duty tow truck, but I don't think it's going to haul away an 8-wheeled tractor. But I think they were trying to there were thousands of people at one point in between Coutts and Milk River, and some of them were illegally parked. We saw a bunch of people get tickets in this march through town where they just issued tickets for illegal parking, as though Milk River is just plugged up with people parking wrong. I don't think they've ever had a traffic jam there normally. Do something better with your time. But, they did, I've got to give the government credit, and I did give them credit in my video. They did get 12 pieces of towing and heavy haul equipment. I think they got, according to my husband and my notes on the Auto Trader, they did get some good deals. I was impressed that they ran out and they went looking for used equipment. That's a very Alberta thing to do. So they were frugal with their money. But the reason this is all so interesting, well, there's a bunch of different reasons, is that knowing what I know about tow truck drivers, and I know a couple, one pretty well, they wouldn't come to this to help out. They wouldn't want to get involved for a bunch of different reasons. But normally blue collar people don't, go after other blue collar people on issues that they ultimately agree with. But they couldn't get anybody in Alberta, in BC, in Saskatchewan, and then out of Montana. They couldn't get anybody to come, not just from towing, but also from the energy services industry, because you have to remember, in Western Canada, we're moving drilling rigs around all over the place. So we've got big trucks and picker trucks and cranes and bed trucks. So moving those pieces of equipment, there's a lot of that sort of equipment out there in Alberta that they weren't for hire to the government. So that was great. But the whole point of this is that it pokes a hole in the federal government's narrative that they absolutely needed the Emergencies Act to compel tow operators to come. Now, they could have compelled tow operators to come through other parts of the law, but good on Jason Kenney, and I don't say that often, he didn't go about that route. He just decided to buy his own tow equipment. But Justin Trudeau has said all along, we needed the EA to get the tow truck drivers to come. The Alberta government had already purchased their own towing equipment before the EA was invoked. And part of that had to do with the fact that Bill Blair, the minister in charge of, I think, emergency preparedness, wouldn't return any phone calls and text messages to Rick McIver, our municipal affairs minister. So the Alberta government just said, okay, well, the feds aren't going to do anything. They're not going to help us. They're not going to connect us with the equipment at CFB Edmonton, which is one of the other options, the military base just north of Edmonton. They thought, okay, well, they've got heavy equipment. Maybe we can get them to come down if we can get federal permission. None of those things were happening from the federal government. The federal government quit communicating with Alberta. So Alberta solved its own problem. And as I said, it just completely dismantles Justin Trudeau's argument that he needed the EA to break up the blockade. The blockade was already broken up, and if it needed breaking up, the Alberta government could have done it anyway.
You know, Sheila, I want to go back and focus on something you said earlier, which was the fact that the government was reaching out to the tow truck driving industry, to the energy development industry. And like, what were they thinking in terms of these would be willing woke allies to go in there and shut down their fellow blue collar individuals? It reminds me, you know, several days ago, we had a little piece on about how David Cassidy, no, not the fictional David Cassidy, the lead singer of the Partridge Family, but David Cassidy, the head of Unifor Local 444 in Windsor, said to a police officer allegedly that he was going to round up 1,000 auto workers, go down to the Ambassador Bridge, break some heads, and then, quote, throw them, meaning the freedom protesters, into the Detroit River, which I can tell you, Sheila, in February is certainly not a Caribbean beachfront water kind of situation. But the thing is, those 1,000 auto workers never materialized. Do you think maybe because many of them were with auto companies such as Chrysler that were suspended without pay for not taking the vaccine? Hey folks, that was an excerpt from my show, Rebel Roundup. Now, to get the full meal deal, why not go to Rebel News Plus, sign up, and never miss a Rebel News Plus show in the future.